On the morning of April 13th, 2008, 19 people sat aboard an anchored boat off Kleinbaai, South Africa, waiting for great white sharks. The sharks never came. Instead, a single wall of water did, and 3 of those people would never reach shore again. Chris Tallman should have been at the start of everything. The American had married Sarah from North Carolina just 4.5 months earlier, and standing beside him at that wedding as best man was his best friend, Casey Lejunas. Now the 2 friends were in South Africa together, and their trip included one of the country's signature thrills, coming face to face with a great white shark. Booked on the same excursion was Kenneth Rogue, a tourist from Norway. Their destination was Kleinbaai, a fishing town about 2 hours from Cape Town that calls itself the Great White Capital of the World. The claim is not empty marketing. A few kilometers offshore lies Dyer Island, and beside it, a rocky outcrop called Geyser Rock, home to a massive colony of Cape Fur seals. Great whites patrol the channel between them so reliably that locals named it Shark Alley. Around this natural spectacle, an entire industry has grown. Every morning, weather permitting, cage diving boats leave the small harbor at Kleinbaai and carry tourists out to the reefs. On Sunday, April 13th, 2008, one of those boats was the Shark Team, run by the operator White Shark Projects and commanded by skipper Grant Tuckett. 10 paying passengers, 9 crew members, 19 people in total. The plan was routine. Anchor over the Geldstein Reef near Dyer Island, put bait in the water, lower the cage, and wait. But the Geldstein carries a hazard that has nothing to do with sharks. It is shallow. When ocean swell rolls in from deep water onto a shallow reef, the waves slow down, stack up, and grow steeper, and occasionally one of them breaks. A boat sitting at anchor with its engines off cannot swing its bow into such a wave, and cannot run from it. The crews of Kleinbaai had worked these waters in heavy swells for years. As a court would later find, that familiarity had quietly turned into complacency. On this particular Sunday, it would prove disastrous. The Shark Team left Kleinbaai at about 7:30 that morning. The sea was running a swell of roughly 4 meters significant wave height, a technical measure meaning the average of the largest third of the waves. In practice, individual waves regularly arrive bigger than that number, and rare ones bigger still. It was heavy water, but nothing the crew treated as unusual for these grounds. The boat pushed out toward Dyer Island and dropped anchor over the Geldstein Reef. From there, the well-practiced routine unfolded. The crew set up the bait line to draw sharks toward the vessel. The cage went into the water alongside. Passengers pulled on wetsuits and gathered at the rails, scanning the surface for a fin. A videographer climbed into the cage and slipped below, camera ready to film the encounters the guests had paid for. Imagine you're one of those passengers. You've flown across the world for this moment. The boat rises and falls on the swell, the bait trails behind the stern, and every shadow in the water might be the animal you came to see. The steady rocking of the hull feels like part of the experience, not a warning. A little over 2 hours passed this way. The engines were off. Grant Tuckett was at the back of the boat, his hands full with the bait line. No one was keeping a proper watch on the sea ahead of the vessel. No one had checked the depth of the water in front of it. And beyond the anchorage, the swell was about to deliver something the skipper had never seen in his life. Tuckett spotted it first. When he looked up from the bait line, a wave was bearing down on the anchored boat, far larger than anything around it, later estimated at 6 meters, and rearing higher as it drove into the shallow water over the reef. He would testify years afterward that he had never seen a swell that size. It was approaching rapidly. There was no time to start the engines, no time to lift the anchor, no time to do anything except scream at everyone to hold on. Seconds later, the wave struck. The Shark Team went over almost instantly, upside down within seconds by the skipper's own account. 19 people were thrown into the cold sea at once, passengers in wetsuits, crew in their work gear, the videographer still inside the submerged cage. Ropes, equipment, and bait scattered across the surface. One moment the boat had been a stable platform on a routine tour. The next, it was an overturned hull rolling in the swell, with people surfacing around it wherever they could. But not all of them surfaced. What followed looked, at first, like a rescue going remarkably well. Other boats were working the waters around Kleinbaai that morning, and they converged fast, hauling people out of the sea one after another. Survivors were pulled aboard, counted, and rushed toward shore. 16 people would be taken to hospital, most with only minor injuries. It seemed everyone had escaped. The count was wrong. Beneath the capsized hull, in the dark space between the deck and the water, Chris Tallman and Casey Lajunas were trapped. Imagine you're there, utter blackness pressing in, the hull booming above you with every passing swell, cold water surging around your face, no way of knowing which direction leads out. The two best friends, who had stood side by side at a wedding 4.5 months earlier, were now side by side beneath an overturned boat. And on the surface, no one knew. More than 40 minutes passed before anyone realized that passengers were missing. In the scramble of multiple vessels pulling survivors from a spreading debris field, the absence of the two Americans, and of Kenneth Rogue, the Norwegian tourist, went unnoticed until it was far too late. By the time the alarm was raised, nothing could be done. All 3 men had drowned. There was a bitter symmetry to it. The videographer had ridden out the entire capsize below the surface, sealed inside the cage, the one position everyone aboard would have called the most dangerous, yet he surfaced alive. It is worth stating plainly, no shark played any part in their deaths. In the great white capital of the world, the ocean itself had been the danger all along. In the aftermath, one phrase dominated the explanations. A freak wave, sudden, unforeseeable, an act of the sea no one could have prevented. For Sarah Tallman, 40 years old and widowed after 4.5 months of marriage, that answer was not good enough. She sued the vessel, its owners, and its operators in the Western Cape High Court, claiming roughly $2.2 million, 24 million rand, for the loss of her husband's support. The case took more than 6 years to reach judgment. At the 2014 trial, the defense argued again that a freak wave had caused the capsize. Acting Judge Freund rejected it. Statistically, the court found, this was probably no freak event at all. Simply a larger wave within a 4-meter swell, one that picked up as it crossed the shallow reef. Exactly where the boat had chosen to anchor, exactly the kind of wave that spot made likely. The judgment went further. The crew had become so accustomed to operating in large swells that they had grown complacent, paying little attention to the swell that day. They had failed to keep a proper lookout. They had failed to depart as conditions worsened. They had failed to check the depth in front of the vessel. In December 2014, the skipper, the operators, and the boat's owners were found negligent and liable, with the amount of damages to be determined separately. The ruling sent a warning through the industry. Reading the sea and keeping watch are legal duties, not habits. Sarah Tallman finally had her answer. 6 years after losing Chris, 3 men crossed the world to face the ocean's most feared predator. No shark ever touched them. One wave, one unwatched horizon, and the sea needed nothing more.